Picture this. You're deep inside an ancient Egyptian temple. It's pitch black. No windows. No torches burning. Yet somehow, ancient workers carved the most incredible, detailed artwork you've ever seen on every wall and ceiling. How did they see what they were doing? Now imagine finding a carving that looks exactly like a giant light bulb, complete with a cord, a socket, even what looks like electrical filaments inside. Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what archaeologists found at the Temple of Dendera in Egypt. And it's been driving people crazy for decades. Today we're diving deep into one of Egypt's most controversial mysteries. Did ancient Egyptians have electricity thousands of years before Edison? Or is there something else going on here? By the end of this video, you'll know everything about the Dendera light bulb mystery. And trust me, the truth is wilder than you think. Let's start at the beginning. The Temple of Dendera sits about 60 kilometers north of Luxor, Egypt. It's dedicated to Hathor, the goddess of love and beauty. But this isn't your typical ancient temple. This place is special. Really special. The temple we see today was mostly built during the Ptolemaic period, around 2,000 years ago. But here's the thing. Egyptians had been building temples on this exact spot for over 4,000 years. Layer upon layer of history, all stacked up in one incredible location. Now, most Egyptian temples are pretty dark inside. That's normal. Ancient builders didn't usually worry about letting in natural light. But Dendera is different. As you walk deeper into the temple, past the massive columns and through the halls covered in hieroglyphs, you reach the crypts. These are underground chambers beneath the main temple. And that's where things get really interesting. In 1857, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette was exploring these crypts when he made a discovery that still puzzles experts today. On the walls of these dark underground rooms, he found some of the most unusual carvings in all of Egypt. The carvings show what looks like huge bulb-shaped objects. And we're talking detailed here. These aren't simple drawings. Inside each bulb shape, there are wavy lines that look exactly like the filaments you'd see inside an old-fashioned light bulb. Coming out of these bulbs are what appear to be thick cords or cables. These cords connect to box-like objects that look suspiciously like electrical equipment. Even more bizarre, there are human figures in the carvings who seem to be operating this equipment. Some are holding knife-like objects near the bulbs. Others appear to be adjusting or controlling the box-shaped devices. When Mariette first published his findings, most scholars brushed it off. It's just religious symbolism, they said. Ancient Egyptians loved their mysterious artwork. But as more people saw the carvings, questions started popping up everywhere. Because here's the problem. These carvings don't look like typical Egyptian religious art. Egyptian artwork usually shows gods, pharaohs, daily life, or religious ceremonies. But these carvings? They look like instruction manuals for electrical equipment. The most famous of these carvings is in a chamber called the Chamber of the Lamps. The name itself is pretty telling, right? This particular carving shows multiple bulb-shaped objects, all connected by cords to what appears to be a central power source. The detail is incredible. You can see individual elements inside each bulb. The proportions are consistent. Everything looks functional, not decorative. Word about these strange carvings spread slowly at first. Remember, this was the 1800s. No internet, no social media. News traveled by ship and letter. But by the early 1900s, engineers and inventors started taking notice. Some of these engineers looked at the carvings and saw something that made their jaws drop. The proportions, the connections, the overall design. It all looked familiar. It looked like electrical equipment they were using in their own work. One engineer named Walter Garn created detailed technical drawings based on the Dendera carvings. His drawings showed how the ancient system might have worked as actual electrical devices. Other engineers followed suit, creating their own interpretations and theories. But the real explosion of interest came much later, in the 1970s and 80s. That's when ancient astronaut theorists got hold of the story. People like Erich von Däniken started asking the big question. Could these carvings prove that ancient Egyptians had help from extraterrestrial visitors? The idea was simple but mind-blowing. What if aliens visited ancient Egypt? What if they brought advanced technology with them? What if they taught Egyptians how to create artificial light sources? It would explain how workers could create such detailed artwork in completely dark underground chambers. This theory gained massive popularity. Books were written. Documentaries were made. The Dendera light bulb became one of the most famous pieces of evidence for ancient alien contact. But as with any controversial topic, not everyone was convinced. Traditional archaeologists and Egyptologists pushed back hard. They had their own explanations for what the carvings really showed. And some of their arguments were pretty convincing too. The debate has been raging ever since. On one side, you have ancient astronaut theorists, engineers, and curious minds who look at these carvings and see obvious evidence of electrical technology. On the other side, you have traditional scholars who insist the carvings show religious symbols that have been misunderstood and misinterpreted. So what's the truth? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. Because this mystery goes way deeper than just some strange carvings on a wall. It touches on fundamental questions about ancient Egyptian capabilities, the possibility of lost technologies, and maybe even extraterrestrial contact. What do you think so far? Do these carvings look like light bulbs to you, or is there another explanation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's dig into the actual evidence. Because when you really look at what we're dealing with at Dendera, things get pretty wild pretty fast. First, let's talk about the technical details of these carvings. The main carving shows what appears to be a large, elongated bulb. Inside this bulb, there's a serpent-like figure with wavy lines throughout its body. At the narrow end of the bulb, there's what looks like a flower or lotus bloom. The bulb sits on top of a pillar, and from the base of the pillar, a thick braided cord extends to a box-shaped object being operated by a kneeling figure. Now, if you showed this carving to any modern electrical engineer without telling them where it came from, many would immediately say it looks like a schematic for a light bulb or electrical discharge tube. The proportions are right. The components are in logical positions. Everything makes sense from an engineering standpoint. But here's where it gets really interesting. Several engineers and inventors have actually tried to recreate electrical devices based on these ancient carvings. And some of them worked. In the 1990s, electrical engineer Walter Garn built a working model based on his interpretation of the Dendera carvings. His device used a gas-filled tube that produced light when electricity passed through it. The resemblance to the ancient carvings was striking. Other researchers have created similar devices. Engineer Reinhard Habeck built his own version using materials that would have been available to ancient Egyptians. His device also produced light, proving that such technology was at least theoretically possible thousands of years ago. But let's step back from the engineering for a moment and look at the bigger picture. Because the Dendera carvings aren't the only evidence that makes people wonder about ancient Egyptian technology. Consider the construction challenges ancient Egyptians faced every day. They built massive pyramids with precision that rivals modern construction. They created underground tunnels and chambers that stretch for miles beneath the desert. They carved intricate hieroglyphs and artwork in spaces where no natural light could reach. How did they do all this without electric lighting? The standard archaeological answer is torches and oil lamps. And sure, Egyptians definitely used both. We found plenty of evidence for torch brackets and oil lamp remains in Egyptian sites. But here's the problem. Using torches and oil lamps in enclosed spaces creates serious issues. First, there's the smoke problem. Burn enough torches in an enclosed space, and you'll quickly fill it with thick, choking smoke. Workers wouldn't be able to see or breathe properly. Yet we don't find evidence of heavy soot deposits on the walls and ceilings of these underground chambers. The artwork is clean and clear, not blackened by centuries of torch smoke. Second, there's the oxygen problem. Burning torches consume oxygen. In deep underground chambers with limited air circulation, this becomes a real issue. Workers would have trouble breathing, and torches would burn poorly or go out completely. Third, there's the heat problem. Torches produce a lot of heat. In the desert climate of Egypt, working in underground chambers lit by multiple torches would be like working in an oven. Despite all these challenges, Egyptian workers somehow managed to create some of the most detailed and precise artwork in human history. The hieroglyphs in deep underground chambers are just as clear and accurate as those carved in well-lit surface areas. This has led some researchers to suggest that Egyptians must have had access to better lighting technology. Maybe not electric lights as we know them today, but something more advanced than simple torches and oil lamps. And there's another piece of evidence that makes people scratch their heads. Ancient Egyptian texts sometimes mention mysterious lighting devices. There are references to imperishable lights and flames that never consume fuel. Most scholars interpret these as religious or metaphorical language. But what if some of these references were literal? The ancient historian Plutarch wrote about visiting Egyptian temples where he saw lights that burned continuously without fuel. Medieval Arab writers described similar phenomena in Egyptian ruins. While these accounts might be exaggerated or misunderstood, they add to the mystery. Then there's the question of knowledge preservation. Ancient Egyptians were incredibly sophisticated in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering. They understood concepts that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe for thousands of years. Is it really so impossible that they also understood some basic principles of electricity? Some researchers point to other ancient cultures that seem to have had unusual electrical knowledge. The Baghdad battery, found in Iraq, appears to be an ancient galvanic cell capable of producing electric current. Ancient Greek writers described strange electrical phenomena. Maybe the knowledge was more widespread than we think. But here's where things get really controversial. If ancient Egyptians did have access to electrical technology, where did they learn it? This is where the ancient astronaut theory comes in. According to this theory, extraterrestrial visitors came to Earth thousands of years ago. They made contact with ancient civilizations, including Egypt. They shared advanced technology, including electrical devices and lighting systems. When the aliens left, humans tried to preserve this knowledge through artwork and religious texts. It sounds crazy, right? But consider this, the Dendera carvings don't just show what look like light bulbs. They also show the human operators holding what appear to be insulated tools. They show proper safety equipment. They show organized, systematic operation of complex equipment. How would ancient Egyptians know about electrical safety if they were just imagining or creating religious symbols? Why would they include such practical, technical details in what's supposed to be purely artistic or religious artwork? And there's something else weird about the Dendera carvings. They're not just random drawings scattered around the temple. They're located in specific chambers that seem designed for technical activities. The Chamber of the Lamps has features that look like electrical installations. There are recesses in the walls that could have held equipment. There are channels in the floor that look like they might have carried cables. The whole setup looks less like a religious shrine and more like an ancient electrical workshop. Of course, traditional archaeologists have explanations for all of this. And we'll get into those explanations in our next chapter. But right now, just looking at the evidence, it's hard to deny that something unusual was happening at Dendera. Whether it was ancient electricity, alien technology, or something else entirely, the Temple of Dendera holds secrets that we're still trying to understand thousands of years later. What's your take on this evidence? Are you starting to think ancient Egyptians might have had electrical technology? Or do you think there's a simpler explanation? Let me know in the comments. Alright, let's hear from the other side. Traditional archaeologists and Egyptologists have looked at the Dendera carvings, and they have a completely different explanation for what we're seeing. According to mainstream archaeology, these aren't light bulbs at all. They're religious symbols that have been misinterpreted by people who don't understand ancient Egyptian culture and symbolism. So what do the experts say these carvings really show? According to most Egyptologists, the bulb-shaped objects in the Dendera carvings represent lotus flowers. In ancient Egyptian religion, the lotus was incredibly important. It symbolized rebirth, the sun, and creation itself. The lotus opens with the rising sun and closes at sunset, making it a perfect symbol for the daily cycle of life and death. The serpent-like figure inside the bulb isn't an electrical filament, they say. It's actually Nehebko, a snake god associated with rebirth and the afterlife. In Egyptian mythology, Nehebko was often shown emerging from lotus flowers, which is exactly what we see in these carvings. The pillar supporting the bulb isn't an electrical socket. It's a jed pillar, one of the most common symbols in ancient Egyptian art. The jed represents stability, endurance, and the backbone of the god Osiris. You'll find jed pillars all over Egyptian temples and tombs. The box-like object at the base isn't electrical equipment. It's a shrine or offering table. The kneeling figure isn't operating machinery. They're performing a religious ritual, probably making an offering to the gods. The cord connecting everything? That's not an electrical cable. It's probably a rope or ceremonial cord used in religious ceremonies. Ancient Egyptians often used ropes and cords in their rituals, especially those related to binding and protection magic. Put it all together, and according to mainstream archaeology, the Dendera carvings show a religious scene. A priest is performing a ritual involving lotus flowers, snake gods, and sacred symbols. Nothing electrical about it. Just typical Egyptian religious artwork that happens to look like modern technology to people who don't understand the cultural context. This explanation makes sense from a historical and cultural standpoint. Ancient Egyptians were deeply religious people. Their art was almost always connected to their beliefs about gods, death, and the afterlife. Finding religious symbolism in an Egyptian temple isn't surprising. It's exactly what you'd expect. Mainstream archaeologists also point out that there's no other evidence for electrical technology in ancient Egypt. No copper wires have been found. No electrical components. No power sources. No other artwork showing similar devices. If Egyptians really had electric lights, wouldn't we find more evidence? They also address the lighting problem in a different way. Yes, working in dark underground chambers would have been challenging. But ancient people were much more adapted to working in low-light conditions than we are today. They might have used polished metal mirrors to reflect sunlight into dark areas. They might have used oil lamps with special reflectors to maximize light output. They might have worked in shifts, allowing smoke to clear between sessions. As for the lack of soot on the walls, mainstream archaeologists have explanations for that too. Maybe the walls were cleaned regularly. Maybe special ventilation systems carried smoke away. Maybe different types of fuel were used that produced less soot. There are lots of possibilities that don't require electrical technology. This traditional explanation has been the standard academic position for decades. Most university courses on Egyptology teach it as fact. Most museum exhibits present it as the correct interpretation. For most professional archaeologists, the case is closed. But here's the thing. Not everyone is convinced. Even some mainstream archaeologists admit that the traditional explanation has problems. The level of detail in the Dendera carvings is unusual for typical religious art. The consistent proportions and technical elements are hard to explain away. And the specific location of these carvings in chambers that seem designed for technical activities is puzzling. Some researchers have tried to find middle ground. Maybe the carvings do show religious symbols, but maybe those symbols were based on real technological devices. Maybe ancient Egyptians did have some form of artificial lighting. Not necessarily electric, but more advanced than simple torches. Maybe the religious artwork preserves memories of lost technology. This compromise position suggests that truth might lie somewhere between the extreme positions. Ancient Egyptians might not have had alien-given electric lights, but they might have had lighting technology that we don't fully understand today. And there are some problems with a pure religious explanation that are hard to ignore. First, the consistency problem. If these are just religious symbols, why are they so consistent across different carvings? Religious art usually shows variation and artistic interpretation. But the Dendera light bulbs look remarkably similar to each other, as if they're showing the same actual objects. Second, the technical detail problem. Religious symbols are usually simplified and stylized. They focus on meaning, not mechanical accuracy. But the Dendera carvings include incredibly specific technical details. Why would religious artists include elements like cord connections, internal components, and operational procedures? Third, the context problem. These carvings are in chambers that don't look like typical religious spaces. They're in areas that seem designed for practical, technical activities. Why would purely religious artwork be placed in what appears to be a workshop environment? Fourth, the innovation problem. Ancient Egyptians were incredible innovators. They invented paper, concrete, surgical instruments, and countless other technologies. They understood complex mathematics and engineering principles. Is it really impossible that they also figured out some basic electrical concepts? Some researchers have pointed out that you don't need modern electrical knowledge to create simple lighting devices. Basic electrical phenomena have been observed for thousands of years. Ancient Greeks knew about static electricity. Ancient people knew that certain fish could produce electrical shocks. Maybe some ancient cultures learned to harness these natural electrical effects. The Baghdad battery, found in modern-day Iraq, shows that ancient people in the region did experiment with electrical devices. Carbon dating suggests it's over 2,000 years old. It's basically a galvanic cell that could produce weak electric current. If people in ancient Iraq had this technology, why not people in ancient Egypt? There's also the testimony problem. Ancient historians like Plutarch describe seeing unexplained lights in Egyptian temples. Medieval Arab scholars wrote about similar phenomena. While these accounts might be exaggerated, it's odd that multiple independent sources reported the same thing. And then there's the engineering testimony. Multiple modern engineers have looked at the Dendera carvings and said they look like electrical equipment. These aren't ancient astronaut theorists or fringe researchers. They're trained professionals who work with electrical systems every day. When experts in a field say something looks familiar to them, that's worth considering. The debate continues because both sides have valid points. The religious explanation makes sense culturally and historically. The electrical explanation makes sense technically and practically. Maybe the truth incorporates elements of both. Or maybe there's a third explanation that nobody has thought of yet. Ancient technology might have worked in ways we don't understand. Maybe Egyptians had lighting systems that weren't electrical but were more advanced than torches and oil lamps. Maybe they used chemical reactions or optical systems, or some other technology that we've forgotten. What's clear is that the mystery isn't solved yet. The Dendera carvings continue to puzzle experts and fascinate the public. Whether they show religious symbols, electrical devices, or something else entirely, they represent one of the most intriguing unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. What do you think makes more sense, the religious explanation or the electrical explanation? Or do you think there might be a third possibility we haven't considered? Share your thoughts below. Let's zoom out and look at the big picture here, because the Dendera mystery touches on some huge questions about human history, ancient knowledge, and how we understand the past. Whether or not ancient Egyptians had electric lights might seem like just an interesting historical puzzle. But the implications go way deeper than that. This controversy is really about how we think about ancient civilizations and what they were capable of achieving. For most of modern history, we've thought about human progress in a pretty simple way. Ancient people were primitive. They gradually got smarter and more advanced over time. Technology developed in a straight line from simple tools to complex machines. This view puts us at the top of the timeline. We're the most advanced humans who have ever lived. But what if that's not true? What if ancient civilizations were far more advanced than we give them credit for? What if some technologies were developed thousands of years ago and then lost? What if human progress isn't a straight line but more like a roller coaster, with peaks and valleys of advancement? The Dendera carvings force us to consider these possibilities. If ancient Egyptians really did have electrical lighting, it means they understood principles that we thought weren't discovered until the 1800s. It means our timeline of technological development is wrong. It means ancient people might have been a lot smarter, more capable than we assume. And Egypt isn't the only place where we find evidence of possibly advanced ancient technology. There's the Baghdad Battery in Iraq. There are precision-cut stones in Peru that seem to require advanced tools. There are ancient Indian texts that describe flying machines and powerful weapons. There are megalithic structures around the world that we still can't figure out how to build with modern equipment. Individually, each of these mysteries might have conventional explanations. But when you look at them all together, a pattern starts to emerge. Maybe ancient civilizations had access to knowledge and technology that we've lost or forgotten. This idea has huge implications for how we understand history. If advanced ancient technology existed, where did it come from? How was it developed? Why was it lost? These questions challenge fundamental assumptions about human development and progress. One possibility is that ancient civilizations developed advanced technology through natural innovation and discovery. Maybe they had brilliant scientists and engineers who figured out electrical principles through observation and experimentation. Maybe they had educational systems that preserved and transmitted complex technical knowledge. Maybe they had thousands of years to develop technologies that we've only had centuries to work on. This explanation keeps human achievement at the center of the story. Ancient people were just as smart as we are, maybe smarter in some ways. Given enough time and resources, they could have developed amazing technologies using their own intelligence and creativity. Another possibility is that ancient civilizations had help. This is where the ancient astronaut theory comes in. According to this idea, extraterrestrial visitors came to Earth thousands of years ago. They made contact with human civilizations and shared advanced technology. When the aliens left, humans tried to preserve and use this technology, but much of the knowledge was eventually lost. The ancient astronaut theory explains a lot of ancient mysteries. It explains how ancient people could have had advanced technology without going through the normal process of technological development. It explains why similar technologies appear in different civilizations around the world. It explains why ancient artwork sometimes shows objects that look like modern machines or vehicles. But the ancient astronaut theory also raises new questions. If aliens visited Earth, where did they come from? Why did they help ancient humans? Why did they leave? Where did they go? And why don't we have more direct evidence of their presence? There's also a third possibility that's less dramatic but equally interesting. Maybe ancient civilizations developed technologies that worked differently from ours. Maybe they found ways to create light, power machines, and accomplish other tasks using principles and methods that we don't understand today. For example, maybe ancient Egyptians figured out how to create chemical reactions that produced light without fire. Maybe they developed optical systems that concentrated and directed natural light in amazing ways. Maybe they used biological processes or natural phenomena that we've forgotten about. This explanation suggests that there might be multiple paths to technological advancement. We've focused on electricity, combustion engines, and digital computers. But maybe ancient people explored different technological paths that led to different but equally effective solutions. The Dendera mystery also touches on questions about how we study and understand the past. Traditional archaeology relies heavily on written records, material evidence, and cultural context. This approach has been incredibly successful at understanding ancient civilizations and their achievements. But sometimes traditional archaeology might be limited by its own assumptions. If researchers expect to find only primitive technology, they might interpret evidence in ways that support that expectation. If they're not familiar with electrical engineering, they might not recognize electrical devices even when they see them. This doesn't mean traditional archaeologists are wrong or biased. But it does suggest that interdisciplinary approaches might be valuable. Maybe we need electrical engineers looking at ancient carvings. Maybe we need chemists analyzing ancient materials. Maybe we need computer scientists studying ancient mathematical texts. The controversy around Dendera also reflects broader tensions in how we balance skepticism with open-mindedness. Good science requires healthy skepticism. We should demand strong evidence for extraordinary claims. We should be careful not to jump to conclusions based on limited data. But science also requires open-mindedness. We should be willing to consider new possibilities when the evidence suggests them. We should be careful not to dismiss ideas just because they challenge our existing beliefs. Finding the right balance between skepticism and open-mindedness is tricky. Too much skepticism, and we might miss important discoveries. Too little skepticism, and we might accept false ideas. The Dendera mystery sits right in this tension zone. So what's the bottom line? Are the Dendera carvings evidence of ancient electrical technology? Honestly, we don't know for sure. The evidence is intriguing but not definitive. The arguments on both sides have merit but also have weaknesses. What we can say is that ancient civilizations were far more sophisticated than we often give them credit for. Whether or not they had electric lights, they accomplished incredible things with the knowledge and tools they had. They built monuments that still amaze us today. They developed mathematical and scientific concepts that took us thousands of years to rediscover. They created art and literature that still moves and inspires us. The Dendera mystery reminds us that history is full of puzzles and surprises. Every archaeological discovery has the potential to change how we understand the past. Every new piece of evidence might reveal capabilities and knowledge that we didn't know ancient people possessed. Maybe the most important thing about the Dendera controversy isn't whether ancient Egyptians had electric lights. Maybe it's that the controversy encourages us to keep asking questions, keep looking for evidence, and keep our minds open to possibilities we haven't considered yet. The past is full of mysteries, and that's what makes it exciting. Whether the answers involve advanced ancient technology, extraterrestrial contact, or conventional explanations we haven't thought of yet, the search for truth is what drives both archaeology and human curiosity. What's your final take on this mystery? Do you think we'll ever solve the Dendera puzzle definitively? And what other ancient mysteries fascinate you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing your theories and ideas. So there you have it, the complete story of Dendera's mysterious light bulb carvings. From the initial discovery that shocked archaeologists to the modern debates that continue today, this ancient Egyptian mystery shows us just how much we still don't know about our past. Whether these carvings show religious symbols, electrical devices, or something else entirely, they represent one of the most fascinating puzzles in archaeology. They force us to question our assumptions about ancient capabilities and keep our minds open to possibilities we might never have considered. The truth is, we may never know for sure what the ancient Egyptians were really depicting at Dendera. But that's what makes mysteries like this so captivating. They remind us that history is full of surprises and that every archaeological discovery has the potential to change everything we think we know. If you found this deep dive into the Dendera mystery as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What's your theory about these ancient carvings? Do you think Egyptians had advanced lighting technology, or is there a simpler explanation we're missing? And if you're hungry for more ancient mysteries and unexplained phenomena, definitely subscribe and ring that notification bell. We've got tons of amazing content coming up, including investigations into other possible ancient technologies, mysterious artifacts that challenge conventional history, and archaeological discoveries that might change everything. Next week, we're diving into another mind-blowing mystery. Ancient precision-cut stones that seem to require technology we supposedly didn't have thousands of years ago. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the past is full of secrets waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.